AMD is the most misunderstood stock in the stock market. This is something I posted on X. It got a lot of attention, and I'm seeing one of the best setups that I've seen in a long time. I'm seeing amazing fundamentals. I'm seeing terrible sentiment on the company. I'm seeing a company that's going down, not because the company is getting worse, but because people believe that it's getting worse. But this is actually not true. And I'm seeing a catalyst that could cause an Nvidia-like move in the stock that very few people are paying attention to, because investors and retail investors, they're busy comparing Nvidia stock to AMD stock and concluding that AMD has lost the AI race without looking into the fundamentals. And the analysts, all they care about is this quarter and the next quarter, if they're gonna beat or miss on 2 cents or 1 penny or 2 pennies. And very few people are talking about what I'm gonna talk about today. And I'm just seeing an amazing setup. And this is why I didn't only just take a position in AMD, but I also took a call spread going into 2027, because I see a short-term catalyst that could cause, again, massive appreciation in the company. I'm going to explain everything today, and I'm going to tell you why I believe AMD is the most misunderstood stock in the stock market. So I really hope you enjoy it. Now, if you just look at the stock price, it's going down 23% over the last 6 months, down over 50% from all-time high. And if you just look at the chart, you compare it to Nvidia, you would believe that AMD is losing the AI race and the company is not growing in earnings and everything is just going out of hand. But this is not true at all. You look at their data center segment, which includes their AI segment, it's up 122% year on year. 122%. Operating margin, they're up from 19% to 29%. I'm not seeing a dying business over here. You look at their client segment, which is mainly their PC segment. It's up 29% year on year, and operating margins went up more than 50%. Now, that's very different from what you're seeing in the stock price. Very, very different. You look at the pace in terms of earnings, the pace of earnings growth. It's massively accelerating. Revenue isn't just up 18% year on year, but it's up 17% quarter on quarter. Earnings per share is up 33% quarter on quarter. This is massive, massive ramp up in earnings growth. And everything has been accelerating and things have been getting better. Yet the stock has been going down because people believe that Nvidia has won the AI race and AMD is the next Intel. And this is why I love this setup. And the main reason why data centers have been growing so rapidly for AMD, as this is from the earnings call, is because Microsoft and Meta expanded their use of MI300X accelerators to power their internal workloads in the quarter. And I'm gonna say something very important. And this is the first thing that's misunderstood about AMD, is why would the hyperscalers and other companies use the AMD chips when they could just use the Nvidia chips? Like, the only reason why they would use AMD chips is just because they're cheaper. The Nvidia chips, they're 100 times better than the AMD chips in every single way. So there's no reason for, the hyperscalers and big companies to use AMD chips. And so that's why AMD has no moat, no competitive advantage, and Nvidia is going to have 100% market share. And again, this is not true. And this is from the earnings call again. And this is what it says. Meta announced they have optimized and broadly deployed the MI300X to power their inferencing infrastructure at scale, including using MI300X exclusively to serve all live traffic for the most demanding Llama 405B frontier model. We are also working closely with Meta to expand their Instinct deployment to other workloads, where MI300X offers TCO advantages, including training. And this is the catalyst that I'm talking about. This is where the money is going in next. This is what Wall Street is missing. This is what a lot of retail investors are missing. And this is why I bought call options on the stock. And this is what I believe AMD will eventually capitalize in. And this is where AMD has an edge over Nvidia so far. And this is why AMD is investing in this technology. And it's mainly inference. And from my research on AI, it starts with training. This is why NVIDIA made all the billions of dollars it did. They were very early on the training capabilities of AI, and a lot of investments went into training. And the training phase is where there's learning a new capability from existing data. And once the model is trained, then inference kicks in. This is the next stage. This is the next stage after training. Inference to apply this capability to new data, to real life kind of events, to make decisions about the models that was actually trained. And this is where a different kind of chip is needed that has a wider memory, and it has to be a little bit different from a chip that's specifically made just for training. And this is where AMD has been focusing on. And this is why a company like Meta has chosen AMD for their inference infrastructure, just to use exclusively the AMD chips, because they're better than the NVIDIA chips in the inference market. And I believe AMD has realized that NVIDIA is ahead of them, way ahead of them, in the training kind of part of AI. And they know that inference is what's coming next after training. And they're trying to have an edge over NVIDIA in inference. And this is where they're investing a lot of their chip capability. And Lisa Su talked about it on the call. And she said MI300 is like very, very well optimized for inference, given the memory capacity and the memory bandwidth capabilities. And this is where everything is going next. And this is where I believe Wall Street is asleep at the wheel and they're not paying attention to it. Everyone is focused on training right now because this is where free cash flow per share is going to. This is what they're focused on is this quarter and the next quarter. And they're comparing NVIDIA's chart to AMD chart. And they're concluding that AMD has just lost the AI race, whereas the AI race is only getting started. And maybe AMD is always going to lag behind NVIDIA on the training part of AI, but maybe AMD is going to have an edge over NVIDIA in the inference part of AI, and so far they do. And this is why Microsoft is using some of their chips, and this is why Meta is exclusively using the AMD chips, not the NVIDIA chips, for their inferencing infrastructure. And this is what comes after training. And this is a massive catalyst that I see that's going to be a wake-up call, in my opinion, for a lot of the analysts that are claiming that NVIDIA has lost the AI race and that NVIDIA is dead. And this is where I see a massive change in sentiment. And I believe it will likely come, in the second half of 2025 into mid-2026. And that's why, other than shares, I bought the 2027 calls. Okay. And this is something else from the call that's very important. And this is an analyst that asked the CEO, for next year, for 2025, you're expected to bring in from data centers 5 to 10 billion, but NVIDIA is expected to bring in 50 to 60 billion. Why is there such a wide gap? And do you expect this gap to close anytime soon? And that was a very good question. And this is what the CEO said. She said, our epic ramp, way before they previously said, our epic ramp, we had an extremely good product, even back in the Rome days. But it does take time to ensure that there's trust built and people want to get comfortable with the workload ramp. So from a ramp standpoint, I'm actually very positive on the ramp rate. It's the fastest product ramp that I've seen overall. And my view is that this is a multi-generational journey. We've always said that. We feel very good about the progress. I think next year is going to be about expanding both customer sets as well as workload. And I think as we get into the MI400 series, we think it's an exceptional product. And this is not a CEO that's just coming in the market. This is a CEO that has proven herself many times. She came at AMD, it was trading at $3 per share. Now it's trading at $121 per share. And I believe she's just trying to tell the market, be patient, give us some time. Last year, AMD didn't do much in data centers. Now they're going to make $5 billion. They were expected to make $2 billion starting the year. Now they're going to make $5 billion. Maybe next year they're going to make close to $10 billion, So just give her some time. And for me personally, someone like that, like this CEO, I'm willing to give her a chance. I'm not willing to bet against her. And I believe the inferencing market is going to be the catalyst that's going to cause the upgrades in AMD stock, the change in sentiment in AMD stock, where people are not going to call AMD dead anymore. And AMD is losing the AI race. And I truly believe that the AI race is so big that AMD and Nvidia can coexist. They're not like Nvidia is not going to have 100% market share. AMD and Nvidia can both exist. And this is something that people are missing. And the second part of the misunderstanding of AMD stock is that AMD, just doesn't have to beat Nvidia. And they could just maintain whatever they're doing and growing in data centers, and they just have to continue beating Intel in terms of laptop market share and desktop market share. And this has been a massively growing area of Intel, of I should say AMD, and they still only have a 21.5% market share in laptop, and in desktop, I believe they have only a 28% market share. And I believe this will massively expand over time. And this is another one that's massively misunderstood. And another catalyst that investors are not paying attention to is the AI PC, which AMD is positioned in. And this is from the earnings call again. It says AI PCs catalyst as well as some of the Windows 10 sort of end support coming in 2025 as catalyst. So the Windows 10 support is coming to an end in 2025. And she said that a lot of the hardware and many different things will have to be changed. And this is another catalyst for AMD going into 2025, other than the AI PC, which AMD is very well positioned to capitalize on it. Okay, now looking at the valuation of the stock, because again, it's not just what we're buying, but it's how much we're paying for what we're buying. And we're paying for AMD right now 27 times forward earnings. And this is non-GAAP earnings. So if you look at Robinhood and Webull and whatever, you're going to see 100 PE. But this is GAAP earnings. I'm looking at non-GAAP, which means it's with stock-based compensation. And I know it's not the best way to value them, but this is how Wall Street values them. And, that's just the way it is. And that's what I'm using here, non-GAAP EPS. And this is 27 times forward earnings for AMD. For the growth, they're expected to grow 50% in 2025, then 38%, 28%, and 30%. For my valuation model, I use two case scenarios. I use the base case scenario, and I use the best case scenario. Now, for the base case scenario, I use the 50% in 2025, and I believe it's achievable with the many different catalysts that I'm seeing. And after that, to be conservative, I did not use 38%, 28, and 30. I used 25% in case they miss on the estimates. So I was a little bit more conservative with the base case scenario. So all I did, just to give you an example, I took the 499 expected for 2025, and I put in 4 years after that, and I put in 25% interest rate growth, and I got $12.18, which would be 5 years from now into 2029. And this is 25% growth, and using 25 PE. Now, the PE right now is trading at 27 times. The mean was 37 times. And again, I'm using 25 times to be a little bit more conservative, although this is at the lower end of the cycle, 25 times. But again, I'm trying to be conservative, okay? Now, using 25% growth and 25 PE, I get $12.18 earnings per share, time it by 25 times earnings. 5 years from now, I get $304 per share, or 150% on the upside over the next 5 years. This is amazing for the base case scenario of AMD. Now, this is the best case scenario. I use 30% growth instead of 25%, and I use the mean PE of 37 times instead of 25 times. And 37 times historically, as you could look at this line, it hasn't been too egregious for AMD. It went as high as 50 and 65 times and 40 times, many, many times. So 37 times could be realistic if they do win in the inference market and they prove the market wrong with Lisa Su. And this is the best case scenario, 37 PE, 1425 earnings per share times 37, I get 527 per share, or 340% on the upside. So worst case scenario, I should say base case scenario, I'm getting 150%. Best case scenario, I'm getting 340%. And I just want to make it clear that I'm not trying to time the bottom on AMD stock. A lot of people told me AMD is bottoming out because it's touching the 200 weekly. Other people told me it's going to $90 per share. And I'm not someone that likes to time the market. And I believe AMD is at a valuation right now where it's not really worth trying to time. I believe it's a decent price to open a position, dollar cost average down. And this is what I decided to do. If it does go to $90 and if the fundamentals are still getting better, then to me, this is an opportunity to buy more of the stock and increase my position and maybe double down on my call options. And I'm going to give you an update after earnings and talk about the stock more often. And that was just my analysis on AMD. AMD does not have to beat NVIDIA. NVIDIA and AMD can both coexist. And I believe AMD at this price is presenting an amazing opportunity. And this is why I did believe AMD was the most misunderstood stock in the market. I hope you enjoyed it. Not financial advice. If you did enjoy it, please press the like button and maybe consider subscribing. So I'll talk to you in another video.